Let's take a look at this interview. It's Crix. He's asking the Cataclysm devs about Cataclysm. We'll see what we can learn from this video.
Hey everyone, how's it going? I'm Clay Stone, Associate Production Director on WoW Classic. Excited to be talking about Cataclysm today.
Hello, hello. I'm Lenny Cook-Saverline, and I am
a
game producer on Cataclysm, or on WoW Classic, but specifically right now Cataclysm. And also very excited to chat with everyone.
So that's interesting. Like, WoW Classic, but specifically Cataclysm, which kind of entails that, like, there's a crossover between SAW, devs, Cata, Wrath, Era, right? And they're kind of shifting focuses depending on the season, right?
Well, I'm Chris.
Yo, guys, seriously, be nice. You're gonna get timed out. Come on, man. Like, let's watch the video. Like, stop.
I just am obsessed with World of Warcraft, and I have the honor to be able to interview some of the devs about Cata, which got some questions here I'm really excited to hear about. And yeah.
All right, cool.
Thank you guys for spending the time today. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Oh, we can get right into it. Yeah, we're good. So to start, we just had raid testing last week, and I kind of just want to see how you guys are feeling about that first round of raid testing. The difficulty felt pretty good, and it seems well received outside of the obvious bugs that you can expect from the first raid testing. So yeah, what are you guys' thoughts on that?
Oh, feeling good about it. It actually, funny, we're in the middle of, actually, literally right now, we are starting another round of raid testing. So that started at 1 p.m. today, and we'll be going through Friday. We were able to—
I was watching that, like, WoW documentary video, like, a week ago, and back in that video, it's so cool. The devs were watching the raid testing on PTR, and they were like watching people spam wipe on new content, and the devs are just sitting there laughing like, oh yeah, you're not supposed to, like, the devs know the fight, right? And they're like, oh yeah, you're getting too close to the boss, so you're dying, or like, you know, you're not killing the ads in time, so you're dying. And they're just kind of like laughing at the people that are testing the raid. I don't know, I always thought that was so funny, man.
To find some really, really valuable bugs from the previous set of testing, and got those fixes in, so we're excited to see what everybody thinks as things are running really smooth.
Okay. Yeah, anytime we do these, you know, feedback, whether it's through in-game or just through various community channels, it's invaluable. But the first one accomplished a lot of what we wanted it to accomplish, which was, you know, really getting players in there, playing through these, testing out heroics, with the gear that we set up on the vendors, and finding out what bugs still existed, and then just hammering through them in time for the second round starting today and running through this week in advance of next week's launch, and especially the week after that of the raids going live.
Cool.
It was also a really cool opportunity just to see all of the combat updates that come with Cataclysm, seeing all of that in action, and how players felt about that in that actual raid setting.
Okay. And since we're on the topic, the raids and the dungeons are post-nerf, it seems. Are you allowed to speak on the decision for not having it be pre-nerf?
Yeah, this is something we spent a lot of time talking about. When it comes to Classic, and it comes to our contemporary player base.
He's going to say, when it comes to Classic, the content needs to be easy because they're old or something.
We have found that a lot of players, ourselves included, love the aspect of Classic where if you plan enough, if you plan far enough in advance, you can actually go in and kind of stomp some content, and it actually ends up feeling really good as long as you plan and you execute. When we were looking at the difficulty of the launch, the original Cataclysm's launch content, it felt like it went a step too far. It felt like it went a place that didn't necessarily work with the player base that we saw consuming our various Classic.
I agree with Clay here. I think if you want a really challenging, novel PvE experience, retail is a great product for that. Mythic Plus exists. New raids exist every tier. It's very difficult, very complex in terms of the mechanics. So if you want that, that exists. Now, Classic as a product, I think, offers something a little more unique, especially in something like Classic Era, where you get your world buffs, you get your itemization, you get your stats right, you get your spec right, and you go in and you kind of just want to like slam the meters. You know, you don't want like anything too complicated. You want like some target dummies. And that's why people like rating something very simple, even like Molten Core or, you know, like BWL is like a little harder, but not much. I guess it's a fair amount harder. But like people like these raids where you have like basically a big target dummy that drops loot. And you can slam the meters and parse and just kind of just have this social interaction, social hour with your friends and your guild. And it's not like overly sweaty or overly complex. And I think that's the appeal to Classic for like a lot of players, is that it's like you get to kind of just vibe out on raid nights. You prepare, you know, you get your stats, you get your pots, and you get your, you know, your strats, and you have some friends, and you kind of go in and do some work. And like I think a lot of players miss that. And I think that's the appeal. And I think Clay gets that too. And so it's like it's supposed to be that way. And I think that the turnoff for Sunken Temple and SOD, I think for some players, and I don't want to speak for everyone because I think some players like this as well, but in SOD, Sunken Temple actually has some mechanics, like some real mechanics, right? 20 players have to be on the same page or you can just wipe, especially on the last 2 bosses of Sunken Temple. And I think what players miss about like BFD is just the simplicity. You get 10 players together, you clear in 30 minutes by just spamming some damage, and you get some good gear. Because that's why players played Classic in the first place, or that's why players return to Classic in the first place. Isn't the difficulty or these crazy mechanics, is the simplicity. I think it's been like a learning experience, but I think the Classic devs understand that, and it's like, yeah, let's not make this thing too crazy hard, you know?
Content. It was juxtaposed with what players seem to be enjoying the most. It's still challenging. It's certainly still challenging. It's still a step up from what we saw in Wrath, and we do agree that there is a historical curiosity to see, you know, what was that experience like back when Cataclysm originally launched. But it really seemed to apply to a much smaller proportion of the player base than we would want to create this time capsule experience for. By the time that Cataclysm had wrapped up at the end, it felt like the balance was tuned pretty well, along with the rest of the class balance that had gone in through that final patch. So that's the way that we're going to proceed for launch for this first tier. Now that being said, we do want player feedback, and we do want to see how players progress through this raid tier. If it turns out that it actually is too easy, or players are you know, burning through it too fast, then I think we would want to look at something like Firelands and look at, you know, ways that we could ramp that up a little bit. I think there's an opportunity there. But no plans to do that just yet. We're just going to kind of see how things progress as players play through them. And then I would also add, kind of going on to the first question that you asked, the raid testing that's going on now, we're also looking at it through that lens as well. So we're seeing how players are progressing, where they're you know, roadblocked or wiping repeatedly, and does that feel...
Someone in the chat has a decent question. They said, like, I don't know where to go for harder content than Classic, but not retail level. I was hoping for Kata. I think that is what Kata is. Kata is certainly harder rating than, Clay said, even more so than Wrath. And definitely harder than Classic, like Era, for sure, way harder. But it's definitely not going to be the difficulty of retail. So I think that is Kata, absolutely. When we talk about these things, it's not binary. It's not black and white. It's not yes or no. It's a spectrum. It's like, how difficult is this? Is it very difficult? Is it little less? Is it a little less? Is it a little less? Is it a little less? You know, Classic Era is like the easiest, and it gets a little step up each time, right? So what we're talking about here is a very minute difference. It's the difference between Kata, how it was on launch, and Kata, how it was after the nerf later in Kata. Doesn't mean the raids are stupid easy, like easy as Classic Era. No, it's still gonna be definitely a step up, but you know, it's not as hard as it was on launch. So we're talking about some nuance here. It's really like a small difference, right?
Right? Do we need to make, you know, any final adjustments before the raid goes live on May 30th?
Yeah, we just want to be really, really responsive overall to players with this because ultimately everybody just wants to have a good time. So we want to kind of help find that balance.
Well, thank you. That was a great answer. Is there any consideration for making tier 11 and tier 12 longer since they were so much better received than tier 13 was? Or are you looking kind of to keep all the phases equal length?
So
That's a
like we
good
announced,
question.
I think about a month ago what our patch cadence release cadence is planned to be.
Mhm.
Historically, yeah, there was definitely kind of the feeling that Dragon Soul was maybe around just a little bit longer than everybody really wanted it to at about 10 months. Ultimately, we don't want to repeat that feeling, but we really want to make sure people have the time to marinate in the content that they enjoy. Firelands had so much cool stuff
One of the best raids
between
ever.
like, yes, amazing raid, really cool questing area, like just everything about it was super memorable. So we want to make sure everybody spends the amount of time, are happy with the amount of time they get to spend in the different sections. So while we do have it generally planned out, we don't have it set in stone right now.
Okay.
And we're definitely willing to kind of adjust our cadence as needed. We do want to keep it going fast enough that players don't feel like they're stuck or getting bored.
Okay.
So we definitely want to kind of hit that balance.
Yeah, I would just plus one what Lenny said. The last thing we want to do is take something away from players if they're having a really good time in it. And so if it turns out that we're moving too fast, then the option certainly exists for us to put the brakes on a little bit. Let's say before we get to Dragon's Soul.
Okay, cool. Yeah, that was the next question. Is what made you guys decide on the shorter phases and expansion compared to the past ones?
I think the short phases is intelligent. I think it makes more sense to have classic era. A lot of people were really excited, kind of TBC, a lot of people. I think if they want to continue doing classic expansions as things get more modern, I think a faster cadence makes more sense. Because when you look at it historically, less players played Cata private servers than like Wrath private servers or like vanilla private servers. So I think like still introducing it, fine, that's a choice, that's a decision. I don't necessarily know if I agree with it, but if you want to do it, then a faster cadence I think makes more sense.
Yeah, it really comes down to, gosh, through this whole classic journey. I mean, the modern player base has shown us that with all their knowledge and all their skill, they can race through this content, given everything that they've learned over now for Cataclysm the last 14 years,
Yeah.
I think it was, or I think it is. And so because of that, we sense it and we feel it as players ourselves that
That's true.
demand for the
Yeah.
next thing a lot sooner than it would be back with the original Cataclysm. But as Lenny mentioned, it really is about finding that nice balance. We've made educated guesses on how we think that will go and when we think that demand will start to amp up for the next phase. But it is a ongoing conversation and certainly something we want to revisit as we see players actually progress through each of the tiers.
Next one is, can we expect any balance changes on any classes? Kind of like what you guys did with Rhett and Feral and Wrath. They're pretty down bad and you guys buffed them up a little bit. Or are you looking to keep kind of the same? Or is it one of those like, we'll see how it goes and, adjust when needed?
That is a fantastic question. Honestly, we're generally really happy with where classes and specs were, like with that final balance patch of 343, or sorry, 432.
Mm-hmm.
We're pretty happy with where everything is. That being said, same kind of deal with Wrath, where if there's something that just really feels like it needs a change, we're definitely open to doing it. And especially just with all of the extensive, sorry, my cat is
You're fine.
joining in here. With all of the extensive changes that Cataclysm brought to combat, we really kind of want to give it a little bit of time to see where things are at as well.
Yeah.
And to see what players do with it.
Okay. Why they figure it out too, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, to piggyback off that, with the expedited release cadence and everything, how it's just going much faster, are you going to put legendaries or any raid loot valor will be easier to acquire since it's so fast, or do you kind of want people to go into the next patch at 70% bis? Like usually right now we have enough time in Lich King or whatever expansion.
That's a good question,
going into the next expansion. It's kind of a worry unless there's like extra loot drops and stuff like that to make up for it.
Yeah, so we don't have anything to announce on that right at this moment. But I will say we are looking to make changes to both Valor and Honor accumulation.
I'm curious how these interviews are handicapped, right? Like the devs these past like year and a half, 2 years from Blizzard have done a really good job with contacting content creators to make videos and interviews like this one, and blue posts and forum posts to kind of explain their thought process. At the same time, it sounds like a lot of the time they can basically not say like a lot. Like they get the interview and it's great, and it's like, okay, we have this question, but it's like they're not allowed to spoil what's going to happen because, well, maybe they don't actually know the answer yet because they're still discussing it internally, you know, with meetings and stuff. And it's like, well, we haven't actually decided yet, so we can't tell you because we don't know yet because we're still talking about it. And it's like, it is nice to have the interviews for sure, but at the same time, it sounds like a lot of the time it's just like, well, we can't talk about that yet because we don't know yet, right? So,
in caps.
Yeah.
But we should have communication going out about that very soon. But yeah, we recognize that players may be in a state where all of a sudden we're moving everything so fast they may not be able to get the stuff that they want to by the time that we move on to the next thing, and that's not something that we want to have happen. Now, that being said, in Classic so far, we have definitely seen, you know, an increased rate by the time that we move on to whatever that next tier is of players getting either full bis or close to full bis than we saw back in our original releases of our Classic expansions. I think it feels good, but there's certainly, you know, a happy medium there. If everybody gets it, does that make it special? That's certainly not something that we want. We still want it to feel special. Yeah. But it's something that is an ongoing discussion with the community and something we're going to continue to have to watch just to make sure it feels right and just challenging enough in the amount of time that players have. But I don't know. That's actually an open question. I wanted to ask you, do you have any opinion on that? Like what the right rate is? Is it?
I love that he's asking feedback from critics. That's cool. Instead of just like, this is how it is. He's like, huh, what do you think? You know, I like that.
Increased from the original days, decreased?
I definitely would say some more loot drops or Valor, or when it comes to like Dragon Wrath, like the legendary staff, like as a Warlock main, we're not main proud for that. You know, you're going to your mages and your Ellie shamans and stuff, so I'm kind of worried about, are we ever going to get one? How fast are things going to drop? Can you expedite things? But kind of like we're all just waiting and find out, you know?
Cool.
Yep, I hear you.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully we'll have some comments on that going out very soon.
Appreciate that.
Stay tuned.
Speaking of changes, are we going to see any changes to LFR with the controversy of all that magicness? Or do you plan on LFR for Demon Soul or Dragon Soul? Sorry,
Demon Soul.
So currently we are not planning on doing LFR. That is still an overall discussion, though.
Wait, did I know that they're not doing LFR or Dragon Soul like at all? Oh, I didn't. I don't know if I knew that. Maybe I read that some like a month ago on that blue post. Huh, interesting.
Something that's a kind of an ongoing discussion because there were so many kind of questions and kind of controversy about it.
Yeah.
So we definitely wanted to do the like looking for group or LFD. That was really, really important that we put that in, but we're still not really looking to go with LFR. But again, if that's something that the community is interested in, then we're definitely interested, as well as if there's certain things that the community would like to see go into it.
Mm-hmm.
I like that. You know, it's so RuneScape OSRS has this model where they basically have players vote on certain things to go into the game. And if the player base votes for a certain thing to change, then it does. And that means also, if the player base is upset on the decision, then the player base is mad at who? The player base is mad at themselves. The player base is mad at the other players, not at the devs. It gets the blame off the devs, because it's like, if you guys want that, we'll do it. This is your ship, we're steering it, but like, you guys make the choices. But it's kind of like, yeah, if you guys want LFR, we can do it. We hear you, let us know. And then if everyone's like, no, it sucks, and they don't put it in, but like, then at least it came from the community. So then the community can't really blame the devs for that. So, yeah.
And certain changes that would make it like really compelling.
Okay. What about any talks about Mythic Plus or Challenge mode, since the client's already on the same as retail and the dungeons are the same state as retail as well? I know a lot of people are talking about it, kind of like how you guys did alpha, beta, gammas, but more towards like kind of a speed running thing?
Well, it's actually kind of an interesting question. We have no plans for that currently. We love the overall discussion. That's really, really interesting. But it's interesting how things are set up because even though we're getting 440 to run on like the modern infrastructure, anything that we want to bring from 440, we have to actively pull over to Classic. And so if we were going to do Mythic Plus stuff, we have to actively bring it over. We did that for collections, which was just really exciting. And I think has been a really, really cool ad. But for something like Mythic Plus, we would have to do just a lot to actively bring it over. Like the alpha, beta, gamma type stuff, that is definitely something that we'd be interested in looking into, just because that might fulfill some of that desire for kind of that additional challenge. And it's also something that really fits in the Classic world.
What alpha, beta, gamma type stuff? What does that mean? What does that mean? I get the gamma dungeons in there. I really like those. It's a frat? No, seriously. Oh, just dungeon difficulties? Okay.
Okay. And I think a question everybody's burning about, is there going to be any bad luck protection plan for archaeology, or is this what we get right here?
Yeah, this has been a fun one.
Yeah, no, it hasn't.
A fun one to discuss because of the various opinions on the Classic team about this.
Oh, even internally they disagree. Interesting.
I would say that despite its grindiness for the players who are very much diving into it, hoping to get specific rewards, it has actually been wonderful to see so many people out there doing it and participating in it. Back when archaeology was originally designed, the team wanted people out there in the world and running around and digging, and it's great to see that again. That being said, we recognize that there is a level of grindiness with it, which can go too far, and players can take it too far with zero bad luck protection. We don't have anything to announce prior to launch on that front, but it is something that we are going to continue watching and listening. Although it may not be in time for, let's say, when the raids launch or something along those lines. Yeah, it's weird because there are actually people who actually do really like that grindiness and being out there and being in the world and kind of just chilling and just doing these. But then, of course, there's the people who are trying to prepare for that first raid tier and trying to get what they need, and they're of a completely opposite mindset.
Hot take. I think it's fine that most people don't get the archaeology best in slot staff. It wasn't designed for everyone to get. It was supposed to be an incredibly rare item. You don't need it. It will give you a DPS boost if you're trying to parse week 1. Sure, it'll be nice, but you don't need it. I think this like modern mindset of like, I need this. It's like, do you? Do you need that? Or can you just like wait until like week 1 or 2, a couple weeks in, and replace it anyway? Like, do you actually need that thing? I don't know. I think this mindset of like, well, I have to grind archaeology for 16 hours today. Screw you, Blizzard. It's like, no, you don't. No, you don't. You can if you want, but you don't need that, you know? So, I mean, that's how I think about it, at least. For players that want to do it and just chill and like watch Ancient Aliens for 16 hours a day and fly from each node, like, yo, man, that's dope, you know? I'm not going to do it, but, you know, like, that's cool, you know? But if you don't want to do it, I feel like it's not that big of a deal. Like, I don't know.
So yeah, it's a complex problem to solve when we are looking to bring something back from the past. But we recognize that the modern player base may not share the same interests as let's say the other half of the player base. So nothing to announce right now, but something that we want to continue to look at and possibly bring changes to in the future.
Keep digging, you know?
Yeah, big agree. It was actually working on Cataclysm, it's been neat hearing like some of the older stories and the older intent. And part of archaeology was meant to be like a gathering profession for everybody, so that everybody could get that exciting, ooh, yellow dot feel as they're running through the world and exploring. And so we want to make sure that we're keeping that piece of it really alive.
Cool. This is a PvP question for the PvPers though. Due to the shorter phases, do you plan to add something to help them out as well, like a conquest catch up or increase the con cap?
That's a good question.
Yeah, that's possibly that's something we're potentially looking into. It's certainly possible. For the pre-patch, we already like substantially reduced the price of the Season 8 Wrathful gear, so that players could better kind of get their hands on it. I could see us potentially making some changes as we go along. With ultimately, we want to make sure that our PvPers and our PvEers all get the chance to have some fun.
Cool. Any chance that there would be solo queues for Arena and Rated Battlegrounds?
Please no.
Oh, we don't have any plans for that at this time, but it's something we really enjoy hearing from the community about and kind of like gauging interest around.
Yeah. Okay. And this is a little bit more random, but it's for a lot of us that play SOD and Classic.
I think there are real negatives to solo queue, and I think there are real positives to solo queue. For people wondering why I said please no. Right? The positive is that the positive's obvious. The positive is it makes PvP more accessible for a lot of players. Same thing as LFR. Right? You can just press play and you get into a game eventually. Right? Now the downside is if you're not a healer, the queue is going to take half an hour. And now that a lot of players are playing solo queue instead of the dedicated like 10v10 or 3v3 or 2v2 or 5v5 brackets, that takes away from the player base of other brackets. So it comes at a cost. There's a cost associated with the relative ease of access. And that cost is longer, more difficult queues on the normal modes. And I think for a classic version of the game, that cost would be too great. So that's why I don't think it would be a great idea to have solo queue in Classic.
We're kind of wondering what happens to our SOD characters afterwards. Is there any shot at the end of SOD we can transfer, or has there been talks about moving that into the Cataclysm servers? Obviously, you'd have to level up, but just so we have something to keep how much time we spent on SOD, be able to keep our characters.
I'm gonna replay that. Okay, so he's basically saying what happens with our SOD characters is the question. So even though this is a Kata interview, he does ask about SOD characters. Okay.
See, without the runes and whatnot. I don't know if you guys allowed to speak on that.
We this is also something that's an ongoing discussion for us. We get that Season of Discovery is a season. It will eventually, have an end. But it's been a fantastic place for us to take some really wild swings, including changing up classes or giving them, substantial additions that make them play differently than they did in the original Classic Vanilla. Bringing them into an existing space, whether that be Classic Era or into Cataclysm, poses a ton of risk. Not just technological risk, but also balance risk. We find ourselves in a situation of, would we ever want to take away something from one of those characters to then put it into an environment so it could exist with everybody else's characters that have already existed in that environment, and that sort of solution to solve a problem, taking something away that players have earned or they've unlocked or they've been using in Season of Discovery.
It's a fair discussion. It's like you take your SOD characters to not retail, but like Classic Era, you would have to then lose your like epic helm that you did like a 4-hour quest chain for to do that. That doesn't feel very good. You did a lot of work to unlock the epic helm, but obviously if you bring that epic helm to Classic Era, it's not really fair either, because there's an existing infrastructure there without access to that epic helm. So it's like you're just stronger than everyone else. You're a time traveler, so your character is just better because you started in, so it's tricky. I mean, if they do it to where SOD ends and then you have to bring your character over, I think the right play would be to remove everything from your character that was SOD that you got in SOD. Because I mean, how would you not? You just bring all the OP stuff. Like, it wouldn't make any sense to just keep all your stuff. It's a tough. They have a pickle on their hands, man. That's a tough one.
Isn't something that feels great, or we don't think that it feels great. So there's no plans for something like that right now. But that being said, we also don't want to take away these characters from players just because it's, you know, a seasonal realm, and we're having a blast developing this content and, you know, progressing through everything with players. There's real achievement that's been accomplished for players with these characters. So we certainly have no plans to like delete them or shut the servers down that they're currently on and then delete them or anything along those lines. I know we've done some realm.
I mean, so they're not going to delete them, and there's obvious risks with transferring them. So that leaves us with, they'll just keep up like a SOD era. Like, that's probably what they're going to do then. Or move to SOD TBC. To me, it seems like they're going to do a SOD era, which is basically Classic Plus, and they'll continue to like do some random new stuff and new little events every now and then, maybe. Like a SOD era. I don't know.
Consolidation, but yeah, I think players should feel safe knowing that their character will persist, will stay on. But as far as transferring it somewhere else that exists, there's no plans for that right now. But that could change. We'll see as we continue progressing through these phases.
Someone in the chat said literally no one will play SOD era if they release Classic Plus. No, the idea is SOD era is Classic Plus. They could even rename it to Classic Plus, and it would basically be this environment that's classic. 60's the cap. There's new raids that come out every now and then. There's new content that comes out every now and then. They do some stuff in Hyjal, 6 months from now. They do some stuff in Oldham 6 months after that. They do some like new so SOD era would be that Classic Plus environment. Like, that would be the idea, I think. I think it seems like that's maybe what they'll do. Well, who knows?
Season of Discovery.
Yeah, we get it. Like, you get attached to your characters. You spend so much time and so much investment in them that we don't want people to just straight up lose them. So we'll kind of work on figuring out what our options are.
Cool. Couple more questions. This is just random, but can we is with Mop Remix around the corner? Is this kind of like flirting with Mop Classic down the road? Is that I know it's a seasonal thing that's happening, but can we? I feel like it's safe to assume that we're gonna get Mop Classic, but I don't like to assume anything.
So honestly, we love Pandarans. Mists of Pandaria itself was such an epic expansion. We have nothing to say today regarding a Mop Classic, but if it was a direction that we wanted to go, we really wanted to note that it will be different than the Pandaria remix. Oh yeah. Just because of the whole setting and having
retail.
Yeah, and like just being the setting, having the same spells you did back in Pandaria, and just everything else that goes into recreating it to have that nostalgic feel for exactly how it was. So yeah, nothing to announce today, but we definitely.
I mean, that's a fair answer. Mop Remix has like nothing to do with Mop Classic, really. Like, when you look at the two modes, they're completely different. So there has been this discussion of like, well, Mop Remix is just a test for Mop Classic. It's like, what do you mean by that? Not really. Not really, right?
I really loved Mop. It was super fun.
Cool. And the last question is something that everyone's kind of worried about is usually with the past expansion, you guys have been very vocal and in communication, like whoever it is that kind of very, and kind of feels like with Cataclysm, it's very, what's the word, like short term, kind of like we don't know until it's like right here. Oh guys, this week we're doing this, or next week. Is that going to broaden up a little bit? We're gonna have a little more communication on like what's going on with the expansion. I know you guys are probably busy and that's why at the same time, but you know.
Absolutely. That's something we definitely want to continue to work on. And definitely I would love to have more communication overall with where we're going and what we're doing. being able to do these interviews are really fun and exciting.
I think that with the roadmap we got this year and with the interviews with a bunch of different content creators, I think they've been doing better than ever. So I applaud Blizzard for like having the courage to set up an interview like this, right? It's not easy to just like, all right, let's just answer some questions. Hopefully this goes well, you know, especially the live ones on Twitch and then the pre-recorded ones on YouTube and then the roadmap. I appreciate that. Dude, even as a content creator in the past, I've had like anxiety about like, okay, we want to plan like my family and we want to plan like a vacation or a getaway. And it's like, but I don't want to plan it when like TBC gets launches, you know, a couple of years ago, or I don't want to plan it when Wrath launches, or I don't want to plan it when retail's getting an expansion and there's no roadmap. So I don't really know when to plan anything. So like as a content creator, I really appreciate the roadmap because it's like, okay, well, from this month to this month, I can pretty much expect, or like I can kind of know what to expect to some degree, that it's going to be some downtime, or this month there's going to be a lot of hype. So like, let's definitely be here for that. I don't know. And maybe as a player, it's probably pretty important too. You can get time off work or like plan your kind of your year. Maybe that's just like the oldest thing ever to say. Well, guys, I gotta know a year in advance so I can plan my year in my bingo tournaments. Okay.
So I love getting to do that, but yeah, being able to give you guys more notice than just, oh yeah, BT Dubs next week, here we go.
Right,
so,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we definitely want to keep.
I hate when they do that. It's like, yo, next week, big thing launching. It's like, dude, give me a little more notice than that, man.
A lot of the communication open with the public. Especially because we really enjoy getting the feedback and kind of getting y'all's feels and thoughts about where we're going.
Yeah, I'm glad you raised this. It's something that we started to really ramp up on just before, you know, pre-patch and then some, and then the weeks since pre-patch, particularly with like our community team and just getting posts out there on the forums and things like that, more blue posts. But now that we're so close to launch next week on Monday, and we're, you know, being able to do these interviews and things like that, my hope, my desire is that we're going to be ramping up communication more and more and more.
Cool. Well, I really appreciate you guys. I have one more little random question that has to do with Kata, and that's what are you guys excited the most about seeing with the launch, whether you're playing it or you're watching it, or, you know, what's the favorite aspect of it?
That's a very cool question. Yeah.
Okay, dude.
Mine's Firelands.
There's so many cool little quests and cool little quest lines in Cataclysm. There's like one of my favorites that went into it is was it Welcome to the Machine?
Yeah.
The first quest going into Silverpine Forest as a Horde member, where you get turned into a quest giver and you get all of the different like stereotypical player NPCs coming up to you with requests and trying to get you to do things.
Yeah.
I'm excited about playing with that one. Having there's another one, was it No Obliteration?
Yeah.
Where
good one.
Yeah, the ridiculous quest where you're just out in the desert and you have to gather up a bunch of crazed gnomes, and you literally hop into this ball and become this insane Katamari ball where you're just knocking out gnomes, picking them up, and just this
I feel like I briefly
ridiculous
remember
ball
that.
of gnomes rolling through the desert. And that's one that quest is not currently available in Modern, so it'll be fun to kind of jump back in and see that again.
That's dope.
Yeah, I would add, you know, it's been so cool to see people who jumped into the original Cataclysm right at their, you know, level 80 characters, never experience any of that 1 through 60 content, and just continue from 80 to 85. People who did that back in the day actually start with new characters at level 1 in Cataclysm and proceed through that level 1 through 60 journey and just see how much work went into it and creativity went into it. There's this quest line in Stone Talon Mountains where you, playing for the Horde, you sort of progress through the ranks of this army, and it ends with Garrosh porting in and murking the leader of your group off of a bridge, which is so cool. And it's
is that the one we saw in the cinematic where it's the bridge is in Thunderbluff and he like kicks him off? I think I remember we saw that. Garrosh, yeah. think we saw that in the Garrosh cinematic the other day when we watched that Garrosh video. Dude, what are you guys most excited for? I'm most excited for freaking rated battlegrounds, man. I'm probably the only one, dude, but oh gosh, I can't wait to just play RBGs all day. RBGs till I drop, and then we'll check out the raids, and then see what's good. SOD P4 will probably be out. Who knows? Oh my god.
It's been wonderful to see people, you know, new and old, be able to experience moments like that for the first time. There's other things too that exist in Cataclysm Classic, which don't currently exist in the modern game, that you can't find, as Linny alluded to, with things like Bashir. Things that are essentially inaccessible in some form or another in the modern game, be recreated and now preserved in Cataclysm Classic. So yeah, I tend to lean towards a lot of that, and being able to do it with an active player base, which is all focused on Cataclysm content right now, because that's what's releasing. So yeah, I don't know. I think there's so much to be excited about, particularly for players who, gosh, just don't remember it as well as they think that they might from 14 years ago, or from players who have simply never experienced it before. It's a great time to jump in, especially, you know, even if it's right at level 1, because of that new content that comes in right at level 1.
Yeah, I've been trying to turn people on to Kata for a year or so now, and I remember when the beta came out, we were one of the first ones in there, and I was just leveling, just start, you know, the basic leveling, and so many people from my chat were just like, dude, this is cool. Like, what? I thought the world changed for the worse. I'm like, no, it actually looks like this is really cool. You know what I mean? And then them to the point where I go to my other streamer friends who didn't plan to play Kata, whether they're SOD players or retail players. I'm like, hey, you should just start a level 1 character, pick your favorite race class.
I'm guilty. I have not done like level 1 to max level character in a very long time. I don't think I ever did 1 to max in Kata, to be honest. I don't think I did. I did obviously 1 to max in Classic Era many times and loved it. I've done 1 to max maybe in TBC, but like as the expansions get more modern, I just played my main. So like in Kata, I just leveled 80 to 85. You know, and in MoP, I leveled 85 to 90, then 90 to 100, you know, whatever. I didn't really like do the level 1 leveling experience very often in the more modern styles of the game.
And just go. And they're like, all right, I'll do it. And now they're like in love with it, trying to play Kata at the max level soon. Like, I was like, yes, that's the goal. Because it like really is a good game. People just need to give it a chance, you know? Don't let the past tear up your future fun, you know?
Yeah, it's been great, and you know, something we talk about a lot, which we love getting to see on the Classic team, particularly as we get closer and closer to launch like this, is really that hype start to build. You know, we love Season of Discovery, and we love Hardcore, and we love Wrath Classic, and we have all these different Classic experiences now, and the focus has been on them for so long. But now we're in this very special period of time where people are jumping into Classic either for the first time or Cataclysm, either for the first time or returning to it. And we are seeing that hype start to build, and that love for what the original team created way back then just start to flourish.
Beautiful.
So it's awesome. It really is cool.
W.
Yeah, it's exciting. We've had a lot of people reach out about like how Cataclysm was what they started with, and that was kind of their intro into WoW, and so they are getting their like nostalgic vanilla,
like Peekaboo started in Kata, I think. So for Peekaboo, playing Wrath isn't nostalgic because you never played it. Peekaboo playing Kata is gonna be nostalgic. Bajira, correct me if I'm wrong, Bajira also started in Kata, right? And so Bashira playing like TBC, it's not nostalgic for him because he never played it, and it's still cool, but he never played it. Bashira playing Kata again, I'm sure he's gonna be like, oh man, this is what I remember, you know? So it's gonna be nostalgic for a lot of people in a way that TBC and Wrath and Era wasn't if you never played those. But a lot of people started like you call them Kata babies. They started in Kata. It's like, dude, yeah, Kata brought in a lot of players. Man.
Experience being able to jump into Cataclysm.
Yeah. Gonna be fun. Well, that's all I have for you guys. I really appreciate you guys spending the time with this. I know I speak for the community when I say everybody's gonna appreciate this. So thank you both.
Yeah, thank you.
I hope you guys have a beautiful launch. I hope the raid testing goes great. And yeah, I can't wait to hear from the future.
Thanks so much. And thank you for all the feedback and communication. It's extremely helpful for our classic team. You know, we've been saying forever that this is a journey that we are building with you, with the players, and we're able to, you know, make changes or adjust things or just be able to continue to deliver what the players want. So you know, the communication is fantastic, and we just can't wait to continue this journey now with Cataclysm.
Sounds good. Well, thank you guys.
Thank you so much for your.
All right, GG's, man. There you have it. We got Cataclysm coming out in 3 days. It's Monday. Today's Thursday. No, today's Wednesday. Okay, no, it's longer than 5 days or something. My days in my head are mixed up because I don't play on the weekends. I don't stream on the weekends. So Saturday and Sunday like don't count as days. So for me, and like tomorrow is Mop Remix, and the day after I'll probably also be playing Mop Remix. So it's like we have like today, and then like Mop Remix days, and then the weekend, and then it's Kata. So to me, it's like it's basically here based on the Xaryu math. There it is. 3 business days. Yeah, there we go.